Imagine two brothers who grew up in the same house in a quiet suburb of Ohio. They shared the same parents, attended the same public schools, and eventually even landed similar jobs in middle management. For the first 20 years of their careers, their lives looked identical. They made roughly the same $75,000 a year, drove similar mid-sized sedans, and lived in nearly identical three-bedroom homes. But at age 65, the story takes a sharp, brutal turn. One brother, let us call him Robert, retires with $1.4 million in his investment accounts. He owns his home outright, he spends his winters in Arizona, and he never looks at the price of a menu item when he goes out to dinner with his grandchildren. The other brother, David, retires with less than $180,000 in savings and a mortgage that still has 12 years of payments left. David spends his retirement working part-time at a local hardware store because his Social Security check does not even cover his property taxes and his heart medication. Identical genes, identical upbringing, identical salaries. So what happened? If you look at their 20s, they were both too young and too broke to make a difference. In their 30s, they were both busy starting families and just trying to survive the cost of childcare. The divergence did not happen then. And it did not happen in their 50s, because by then the trajectory was already locked in. The entire difference between a life of freedom and a life of struggle was decided in a single 10-year window. The divergence happened entirely in their 40s. Today, we are going to look at why your 40s represent the most consequential financial decade of your entire life. It is not just another 10 years on the clock. It is a unique intersection of mathematical forces that will never align again. For most people, the decisions made between age 40 and 50 act as a financial gravity well. If you make the right moves, the momentum carries you to a finish line you never thought possible. If you make the wrong ones, you create a mathematical deficit that no amount of hard work in your 60s can ever fix. To understand why this decade is so powerful, we have to look at the intersection of three specific forces. Economists call this the triple alignment of the 40s. The first force is peak earning power. Data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that for the vast majority of American professionals, income reaches its absolute maximum somewhere between age 42 and 55. This is the decade where you finally have the most raw material available to build wealth. You are no longer the junior employee scraping by. You have seniority, you have expertise, and you have the largest paychecks of your life. The second force is the compounding clock. At age 40, you still have 20 to 25 years until traditional retirement. That is just enough time for your money to roughly quadruple at historical market returns. A single dollar invested at age 40 becomes approximately $4 by the time you hit 65. But watch what happens if you wait. At age 50, you only have 15 years left. That same dollar only becomes $2.50. By 55, it barely becomes $2. The multiplier effect of your money drops off a cliff after age 50. Your 40s are the last decade where compounding still feels like a superpower, rather than a slow crawl. The third force is expense stabilization. By your 40s, the chaotic spending of your 30s usually starts to settle. Your career wardrobe is established. Your home is furnished. Your children are becoming more independent. This creates a potential margin, a gap between what you earn and what you spend, that simply did not exist when you were 35. When Robert and David entered their 40s, they both felt the same social pressure. They both saw their friends upgrading to 5-bedroom houses in the prestigious zip codes. They both saw the luxury SUVs in the office parking lot. They both felt that quiet, nagging voice that says, "I have worked hard for 20 years. I deserve to finally live like a success." David listened to that voice. He saw his peak earnings as a green light to expand his lifestyle. He traded his reliable sedan for a $65,000 European luxury car with an $800 monthly payment. He convinced himself that his kids needed a bigger yard, so he sold his $300,000 home and bought a $600,000 one, doubling his mortgage and his property taxes in the process. Robert looked at the same math and saw a trap. He realized that the extra $2,000 a month he was earning was not lifestyle money. It was freedom money. He stayed in the modest home. He kept driving the older car. He took that $2,000 margin and funneled it relentlessly into his brokerage account. Most people think the difference between Robert and David is just a few nice things. They are wrong. The math is much more cruel than that. By choosing the house and the car, David did not just spend $800 a month. He spent the $1.3 million that those same dollars would have become if he had invested them at age 42. David bought a version of himself that felt successful for 10 years, but that decision cost him 30 years of peace in his old age. This is the reality of the 40s. It is the decade where the stakes multiply. You are standing at a fork in the road, and the path you choose is permanent because, by the time you realize you are on the wrong one, the compounding clock has already run out of batteries. We are going to look at the specific scoreboard for age 45, and I am going to show you why the average net worth numbers you see in the news are a dangerous lie. Because if you are comparing yourself to the average, you might be failing a game you think you are winning. Now, to understand where you truly stand in this decade, we have to talk about the scoreboard. Because if you are getting your financial news from mainstream headlines, you are being lied to by a statistical phenomenon called the average. According to the latest Federal Reserve data for 2026, the average net worth for a household headed by someone aged 45 to 54 is nearly $1 million, $975,800 to be exact. When most 45-year-olds read that number, they feel a physical punch to the stomach. They look at their own accounts and see 50,000 or maybe 120,000, and they assume they are a complete and total failure. But here is the secret the headlines won't tell you. The average is a lie. If you put Jeff Bezos and 9 broke guys in a room, the average net worth of that room is over $20 billion. Technically, every guy in that room is a multi-billionaire on paper. Practically, 9 of them are still wondering how they are going to pay rent on Friday. To find the truth, you have to look at the median. The median is the person standing exactly in the middle of the line. And the median net worth for a 45-year-old in America is not $1 million. It is $247,200. That is the real person. That is your neighbor. That is the guy sitting next to you in traffic. But even that $247,000 number is hiding a dangerous reality. Because for the typical person in their 40s, roughly 70% of that net worth is not money at all. It is drywall. It is home equity. We have been conditioned to view our primary residence as our greatest investment. But in your 40s, a massive, expensive house can actually be a wealth prison. We call this the Drywall Portfolio. Imagine you have $200,000 of equity trapped in your walls. You feel wealthy, but you cannot eat drywall. You cannot pay the electric bill with a brick. If you lose your job at 48 and your bank account is empty because you sent every extra dollar to the mortgage company, the bank will not lend you money against your house because you have no income. You are sitting inside a pile of gold while starving to death. This brings us back to David. In his early 40s, David felt the pressure to perform. He looked at his 3-bedroom starter home and decided it wasn't enough. He moved his family into a $600,000 house in a prestigious zip code. His mortgage payment jumped by $1,600 a month. David didn't see this as a tragedy. He saw it as a sign of success. He told himself he was building equity. But here is the brutal math David ignored. That $1,600 monthly increase was a direct theft from his retirement. If David had stayed in his modest home and invested that same $1,600 a month into a diversified index fund returning 8%, That single decision would have been worth over $1.1 million by the time he turned 65. David didn't just buy a house with a nice kitchen. He bought a house that cost him his entire retirement freedom. And then there is the maintenance. Every status symbol you buy in your 40s comes with a recurring invoice of time and energy. A larger house has higher property taxes, higher cooling bills, and more square footage that needs to be cleaned, repaired, and furnished. In the financial world, we call this a lifestyle multiplier. One big purchase triggers a cascade of smaller, invisible expenses that slowly bleed your peak earnings dry. While David was busy managing his lifestyle multipliers, Robert was looking at a different set of numbers. Robert realized that the most important number for a 45-year-old isn't net worth. It is the liquid bridge. Fidelity publishes a famous rule of thumb that says, by age 50, you should have 6 times your annual salary saved for retirement. If you are making the median household income of roughly $117,000, that means you should have $700,000 in your accounts. But the reality is that the median 401k balance for people in their late 40s is only $60,763. Most people are not just a little bit behind, they are 10 times behind. And the reason is often something called the sandwich generation trap. Your 40s are the years where you are being squeezed from both sides. You are likely still supporting children, perhaps even adult children who have moved back home, while simultaneously beginning to care for aging parents. Data shows that over 50% of Americans in their 40s are providing some form of financial support to a parent and a child at the same time. The average out-of-pocket cost for caring for an aging parent is over $7,000 a year. That is money that used to go into your 401k. This is why your 40s feel so heavy. It is not that you are bad with money. It is that you are paying for 3 generations of life out of one paycheck during the only decade where the math still allows you to build a bridge to freedom. The people who win this decade are the ones who realize that average is a trap. If you are living like the average 45-year-old, you are carrying over $150,000 in total debt. You have less than $70,000 in retirement, and you are hoping that a great wealth transfer from your parents will save you. But relying on an inheritance is the ultimate financial gamble. The average cost of end-of-life care is roughly $137,000 per person. By the time your parents' estate reaches you, a huge chunk has already been eaten by the nursing home and medical bills. The median inheritance for the bottom half of the wealth distribution is only $9,700. That is not a retirement plan. That is a used car with a check engine light. So, if the average is a failure and the median is a struggle, what is the alternative? In the next part, we are going to look at the specific 4-step recovery plan for late starters. I'm going to show you exactly how to rebuild your compounding machine, even if you are starting with 0 at age 45. And we will reveal why your 55th birthday is actually the most important deadline you have never heard of. If you are sitting there at age 45 and realizing you are in the wrong story, I need you to listen closely. Because the worst thing you can do right now is succumb to financial grief. Grief is a stagnant emotion. It does not pay bills, and it certainly does not compound. You still have one thing that a 60-year-old would give everything they own to possess: a 20-year window. It is a narrow window, but it is wide enough to drive a truck through if you are willing to be precise. To win from a standing start at 45, you have to stop playing the game of averages and start playing the game of efficiency. We follow a 4-step recovery protocol designed specifically for late starters in their peak earning years. Step 1. The lifestyle freeze. This is the hardest psychological hurdle. You must decide today that your current level of consumption is your absolute ceiling for the next 20 years. Every raise, every bonus, and every tax refund from this moment forward must be treated as invisible money. It goes straight to the compounding machine. If you earn an extra $10,000 this year, your life should not change by a single dollar. You are not depriving yourself. You are buying back the 10 years you spent not saving. Step 2. Rebuild the liquid bridge. Before you touch a single investment, you must have $20,000 in cash. We have talked about this before, but in your 40s, it is even more critical. You are in the sandwich generation. You are the most targeted demographic for unexpected expenses. Without that $20,000 firewall, your retirement plan is just a suggestion that will be discarded the moment your parent needs a specialized nurse or your roof begins to leak. Step 3. The bridge account transition. Most people in their 40s are told to blindly max out their 401k. For a late starter, this can be a trap. If you want to retire at 55 or 60, you cannot have all your wealth locked in an account that you cannot touch until 59 and a half. You need to build what we call a bridge account. This is a standard, taxable brokerage account filled with low-cost index funds. This is the money that will fund the gap between the day you walk away from your job and the day you can access your retirement accounts and Social Security. Step 4. Master the rule of 55. This is the most powerful secret in the United States tax code for people in your position. Most people think their 401k is locked until age 59 and a half, but the IRS has a specific provision. If you leave your job in or after the year you turn 55, you can withdraw money from your current employer's 401k without the 10% penalty. This is your ultimate deadline. Your 55th birthday is the day the cage door opens. If you can bridge the gap to age 55 with your taxable savings, you are officially free. Think about what happens to Robert and David now. Robert reached 55 with his house paid for and a massive liquid bridge. He did not wait until 65. He used the rule of 55 to step away at 57. He spent his final 10 years of work doing consulting on his own terms. David, on the other hand, is still trying to catch a train that left the station in 2012. He is 61 years old and just realized that his European SUV from 10 years ago is now worth $4,000, while the $1.3 million he could have had is sitting in Robert's account. David is not a bad man. He was just a victim of the average. He followed the social script of his peer group instead of the mathematical script of his future. The divergence of the 40s is not about being a genius. It is about realizing that your peak earning years are a finite resource. They are the harvest season. If you eat all your seeds during the harvest because you want to show your neighbors how well you are doing, you will starve during the winter. Your 40s will end. The clock is going to strike 50 whether you have a plan or not. The only question is which version of your 70-year-old self you are currently creating. Are you creating the Robert who sleeps through the night, or the David who is doing price per ounce math on heart medication at a hardware store? You have approximately 3,650 days in this decade. Every single one of them is a decision. Every dollar you redirect today is a brick in the bridge you are building to your own freedom. Stop performing, stop comparing, start building. Because in the end, the math does not care about your suit, your zip code, or your job title. The math only cares about the gap between what you earn and what you keep. And in your 40s, that gap is the only thing that stands between you and a life of permanent struggle. Welcome to the decade of the triple alignment. Use the power while you still have it, because once it is gone, it never comes back. If this breakdown changed how you look at your next 10 years, hit that subscribe button. We are dissecting the hidden mechanics of aging and wealth every week. I will see you in the next one.